Hello everybody, I am Lauren Harpster from Bead and Blossom, and today I am kicking off my Learn French Beading Beginner course, which will be happening right here on my YouTube channel. I'm going to start this course off. Before we get into any of the techniques or any of the practice patterns that I've got coming for you, we're going to learn how to string beads onto wire. Now, usually if you're working with just one color of beads, you can pre-string them onto your wire at the beginning before you start. That way you can work directly off of your spool without having to measure or cut wire. Now there are two basic methods for stringing beads onto wire that I'm going to show you today. One is going to be stringing directly from a hank of beads. If you can purchase your beads on one of these hanks, then you're going to have a very easy and inexpensive way to string your beads. However, if you're like me and find stringing from hanks very frustrating, or if you're working with loose beads, then you're going to want to use a bead spinner. So we're going to go over that as well. Now, if you were to ask a group of French beaders what is the fastest and easiest way to string beads, you're going to get some mixed answers because everybody has different preferences. People's hands work a little bit differently. So everybody has their favored method. So I'm going to show you both. I'm going to recommend that you try both and then figure out which one works best for you. Alright, so we're going to start with the hank method. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, a hank is a bundle of beads that are strung onto threads. And there's little loops of beads, and then they're all tied at the top into a little bundle. Now, with 11 OOC beads, you're going to get 12 strands with about 18 to 20 inches of beads per strand. So to string from a hank, you're first going to need to remove one end of the loop of beads from the knot at the top. Most of the time it's going to come out pretty easily, and you'll just pull it out. And then you want to make sure that you have a nice clean cut on the end of your wire, and you want to make sure that this is nice and smooth as well. Sometimes the end of the wire gets a little bit kinked up and you'll just want to clip that off. So to string from a hank, you're going to try and stretch it out to be as straight as possible as you can so you can get through more beads. And then you're just going to insert your wire into one end and slide it through as far as you can. And then you'll grab a hold of the beads that are on the wire and slide them off of the thread as you move them down the wire. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I do not like stringing from hanks. I'm not very well practiced at it, but there are other ways to do it. You can lay your thread very flat against a table or work surface, and then slide your wire through. You'll probably want to anchor down this other side over here, just to make sure you have enough resistance. Alright, so I think you understand here basically how you string from a hank. Now there are some problems that sometimes come up when you're stringing from a hank. Sometimes the beads, the holes are a little bit smaller, or they're strung on thicker threads, and so it's really tight to try and get your wire through there. And I find that this happens more and more as I buy more beads. When I try and string them by hank, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So when your beads are really tight, you're going to have to remove a little bit at a time just by pinching a small length between your thumb and forefinger and hold them really tight, and then slide your beads through, and hopefully you'll get all of them. Now, as you get further into the hank, as you start pulling more and more threads out of this top knot, it's going to start getting loose. And then you'll have threads that just start falling out on their own with very little pressure. And that will end up with a very big mess. You'll have beads everywhere. So once it starts getting loose, you'll want to take out one end and then tie a knot around the last bead. This will kind of help that bead act as a stopper. And then you can carefully remove the other end from the knot at the top and string your beads that way. All right, now we're going to talk about how to string your beads onto your wire using a bead spinner. Now this is going to be a very crucial way for those of you who don't have access to beads that come strung on hanks, as they aren't available in every country. And if you're working with Japanese beads, I've only seen a couple of countries that have Japanese beads strung on hanks. So if you like to work with Japanese beads, which are a little bit better quality, then you're going to want to use a bead spinner. Now a bead spinner, let me show you this one here so you can see all the little parts here. This is what a bead spinner is going to look like. It has two parts. There is a base with a little rod that sticks out of the middle. And then of course you have the bowl, which of course that's where all your beads go. And then the bowl just sits right on top of the base. And then you use the spindle at the top to spin it to help string your beads. Now, this is a smaller sized bead spinner. They're usually called juniors, I think. But if you're just starting out with French beading, then this is what I'm going to recommend that you get, is this smaller bead spinner, because it works a little bit better with smaller amounts of beads. All right, so let's talk about how to use it. Now bead spinners work best when they are at least halfway full, but no more than 2/3 the way full. If you have too many beads in there, then as you're stringing, they're going to fly out all over the place, all over your workstation. And if you have too few, then they're going to string very slowly. All right, so just like with the hank method, you want to make sure that your wire has a nice clean cut on the end and that there aren't any awkward bumps or anything in your wire. You can smooth it out with your fingers, or you can use some nylon jaw pliers to make sure that your wire is nice and smooth. And then we're actually going to bend it into a little bit of a hook shape. Something like that will work just fine. And we're going to insert this hook into our bead spinner at an angle, a little bit horizontally. We want the tip of our wire to be towards the outer edge of the bowl, because as you're spinning, that's where your beads are going to gravitate towards. The point of the wire towards the outer edge of the bowl, and you just want that end of your wire to just barely skim the surface of the beads. If you go down into the beads too far, then you're also going to get beads that fly everywhere. So just skim the surface right at the top. You hold that in position, and you want to make sure that this wire isn't touching your bowl anywhere. If it's laying on the edge, then it's going to slow your spinner down, or that little bump in the middle there. So keep it off of your spinner. And then I'm going to spin my bowl using the spindle, and of course you see that the beads are jumping right onto my wire. Now I've got the tip of my beads the tip of my wire going this direction, so I need the beads to move this way. So I'm spinning my spinner this direction. So again, I'm just skimming the surface of my beads. And then you can slide them down onto your spool. Now I say this like it's extremely easy, and it is once you get the hang of it, but it does usually take a little bit of practice to get the right angles and the right shapes. And it's not always going to work exactly the same for everybody. So if you find that this is not working very well, then you need to either change the angle that you're inserting your wire into. Some people go straight down like this into the bowl, but you also want to change the shape of your hook. Play around with the shape of your hook until you get one that works really well. Generally, you want to kind of match the curve of the bowl. Because if you have a hook that's a little bit tighter like this, and your beads aren't going to be able to go on. So try to match the shape of your bowl. But you can also move it into different positions inside the bowl. I have mine here on the right side. That's just what's most comfortable for me. But you can do this going this direction if you prefer. And you are going to want to change the angle of your wire if you do this, because if I leave it at that same hook that I was using, I'm not matching the curve of my bowl. So I'm going to change my angle a little bit. Then I can go this direction, and I can get my beads on that way. You can do the same thing pretty much anywhere inside the bowl. I'm going to show you another way to do this. You can also make just kind of a wide curve, a wide arc like this. When you insert it into your bowl, again, you want the tip near the outside edge, and you want the wire almost horizontal. All right. So there is another way to string your beads. If you saw at the end there, my wire tip got kind of pulled down further into the beads, and it kind of pulled my wire this way. That's one thing you want to try to avoid. It's not always easy to do. This method I'm going to tell you does generally kick out more beads than the hook method. But I do find that it works better when you've gotten down really low in the bowl to switch to that wide arc, just to help pick up those last little beads. So anyway, there is how to use a bead spinner. If you have any questions, you are free to put them in the comments below or to email me directly. You can find that information on my website, beadandblossom.com.